Chapter 1. Prologue I. Hydra Research Base outskirts of Novigrad, Sokovia. The air inside the cold, gray Hydra fortress was suddenly split by a high-pitched shriek. Red lights flashed everywhere, painting the metal walls in urgent, pulsing bursts. Beep, beep, beep. A voice, rough and strained, blasted from speakers hidden in the ceiling. Report to your stations immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Report to your stations immediately. Panic erupted. Men and women in dark Hydra uniforms scrambled through the long hallways. They were soldiers, their faces grim as they grabbed guns, heavy weapons, and anything they could use to fight. Boots pounded on the metal floors, creating a thunderous echo that mixed with the blaring alarms. Hidden away in a small, secure room, two children pressed close to each other. One was a girl with dark hair, her eyes wide with fear. The other was a boy, just a bit older, trying to look brave, but his trembling hands gave him away. These were not ordinary children. They were special, and their presence in this secret Hydra base was dangerous news for them. The harsh voice on the speakers shouted again, louder this time, almost cracking with anger. It was Baron von Strucker, the leader of this base. We are under attack. Arm yourselves and report to your stations. Now, now, now. The invaders were not some local militia or rival group. They were the Avengers. Earth's mightiest heroes had received information about this hidden Hydra location in Sokovia, and they had moved fast. Each hero had a role to play, their powers perfectly suited for taking down a fortified enemy. Outside, the battle was a storm of action. Captain America moved like a whirlwind. His famous shield, a circle of red, white, and blue, spun through the air, knocking Hydra soldiers off their feet before snapping back to his arm. He punched and kicked with skill, clearing paths through the enemy lines. Above him, Iron Man streaked across the snowy sky. His red and gold armor gleamed as he fired bright energy blasts from his hands. Explosions rocked the ground as he took out enemy cannons and vehicles. Black Widow, dressed in her sleek black suit, was a shadow in the chaos. She moved with deadly grace, fighting Hydra soldiers up close. Her hands and feet were fast as she disarmed and defeated anyone who got in her way. A monstrous roar echoed across the battlefield. The Hulk, a giant green powerhouse, smashed through concrete walls and tossed armored tanks aside like toys. His rage was a weapon, and Hydra's defenses crumbled before him. From the sky, lightning flashed, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. Thor, the god of thunder, with his long blonde hair and red cape, swung his mighty hammer, Mjolnir. Bolts of electricity struck down groups of Hydra soldiers, sending them flying. And from a high vantage point, Hawkeye let his arrows fly. Each one was precise, disabling equipment or finding its mark on a distant enemy with amazing accuracy. The Avengers were like a force of nature. Hydra soldiers, armored tanks, and hidden bunkers, nothing could stop them. This base in Sokovia was just one of many that Hydra had hidden around the world. The Avengers were determined to find every single one and tear them down, piece by piece. Today, it was Sokovia's turn to be cleansed of Hydra's evil. Inside, the sounds of explosions and fighting grew louder, closer. The two special children held each other's hands tightly, the floor vibrating beneath them, wondering what awaited them when the fortress walls finally broke. While Captain America and the others dismantled Hydra's forces on the snowy ground, Iron Man focused on the main fortress. A shimmering, almost invisible energy shield covered the structure, deflecting his repulsor blasts. "Jarvis, any ideas on this shield?" Tony Stark muttered inside his helmet. "It's a bit tougher than their usual tinfoil defenses." He dodged incoming fire, his mind racing to find a weakness. Deep beneath the chaos, in a silent, cold part of the Hydra fortress, lay a hidden facility. Here, the sounds of battle were distant rumbles. The air was chilled, and rows of humming machinery lined the walls. In the center of one room stood a single, upright capsule. It wasn't made of metal or glass, but something that looked like pure, solid ice, glowing faintly from within. Inside this icy prison, a human figure was suspended. It was a young man, perhaps 16 or 18 years old. His hair was stark white, like fresh snow. His face, peaceful in its frozen slumber, was incredibly handsome, so perfectly formed it looked like a sculpture, a masterpiece created by a skilled artist. But this was no art piece to be admired. He was one of Hydra's experiments, like the two children hidden elsewhere in the base. This young man, however, was different. Hydra had deemed him more of a threat than an asset. He was too powerful, too uncontrollable. So, they had put him to sleep, encased in this special ice-like capsule that halted his aging, freezing him in time like some dangerous creature they didn't know how to handle. There had been plans to transfer him to a more secure, even more remote Hydra base. But the Avengers had been relentless, hunting down Hydra outposts one by one, making such a risky transfer nearly impossible. There was also the immense risk of waking him. Even now, with the Avengers tearing his base apart, Strucker hadn't dared to consider it. He knew that if the young man in the ice capsule awakened, his first act would likely be to destroy everyone around him, Hydra and foe alike, before he even thought about stepping outside. He was a weapon they couldn't aim. Adding to his mystery, there were no official records of his existence, not even in HYDRA's most secret files. It was as if he had never been born, never lived. Practically speaking, this boy didn't exist. Yet, here he was, a beautiful, dangerous secret, about to have his long sleep disturbed. Today, after years of silence, his eyes might finally open. AN. 2 more chapters are coming. You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Creation is hard, cheer me up. Vote for me, Kazuma_Trash Creators Thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 2, Prologue 2. The real reason the Avengers had came upon this particular Sokovian base with such speed and force wasn't just to eliminate another Hydra cell. Their intelligence pointed to something far more significant. Loki's scepter, the powerful alien artifact, was here. Hydra was using it for unknown, but undoubtedly sinister, purposes. That discovery had made this base their top priority. Up above, in his command center, the screens showing the losing battle flashed red. Baron Strucker slammed his fist on a console. Deploy all remaining units, he roared into the intercom. Every soldier, every tank. Hold them back. Then, turning to a hidden doorway, his face grim, he began his descent. He moved quickly down a series of sterile corridors, heading towards the underground facility, towards the icy secret hidden below. Outside, the sounds of battle raged. Explosions shook the ground, and the air crackled with energy. Iron Man, however, was focused on the fortress itself. "All right, Jarvis, let's peel this onion," Tony Stark quipped, his voice calm inside his metal suit despite the chaos. After knowing what was powering the shield and how to bring it down with Jarvis' help, a few precise blasts and some clever maneuvering, the shield was down. Bingo, we're in. Iron Man swooped through the newly created opening, landing with a metallic thud in what looked like a main operating room. Hydra soldiers immediately opened fire, their bullets bouncing harmlessly off his armor. "Guys, please we gotta talk this through," Tony commented, though the opposition wasn't keen to listen to the enemy. Tony raised his palm. Repulsor blasts shot out, sending the soldiers flying. A few Hydra researchers in white coats frantically tried to delete files from their computers, but a quick, non-lethal stun blast from Iron Man put a stop to that. "Well, good talk." "No, it wasn't. Jarvis, you're on cleanup duty. Grab every byte of data from these junk heaps," Tony instructed, his helmet optics scanning the room. "And see if you can find another Hydra base or some of their plans. I bet there are some things he doesn't want us to see here." As Jarvis worked, Tony's eyes landed on an odd-looking section of the far wall. It seemed too plain, too deliberately unremarkable. He walked over to it. "Please be a secret door, please be a secret door," he muttered, tapping various spots. Finally, he pressed a section that gave a soft click, and a part of the wall hissed and slid inwards, revealing a dark passage. "Called it." Tony stepped through, his suit's lights cutting through the gloom. The passage led downwards, into the secret underground lab he had suspected. It was colder here, and the air hummed with a different kind of energy. "Guys," he said into his comms, his voice echoing slightly, "I think I found something bigger down here. And it is literally bigger. Looks like their main R&D/evil lair department." He continued forward, his repulsors humming softly, ready for anything. He moved past rows of strange equipment until he reached a central platform. And there it was, sitting on a pedestal, pulsing with a faint blue light, was Loki's scepter. "Well, hello there, glow stick of destiny," Tony said, walking towards it. He reached out his armored hand, ready to retrieve the dangerous artifact. Just as his fingertips were about to make contact, a presence flickered behind him. Before he could react, he felt a strange sensation. A young woman, her fingers splayed, sent tendrils of red, ethereal energy towards Tony's head. The energy slipped past his helmet's defenses and into his mind. Suddenly, Tony's vision twisted. Images, not his own, flashed before his eyes. Destruction, fear, a dark future he couldn't quite grasp. It was over in a moment. He stumbled back, gasping, his heart pounding. He shook his head, breathing heavily, a new, deeply unsettling look of understanding or perhaps dread etched on his face under the helmet. He looked around wildly, but there was no one there. From the shadows behind some equipment, Wanda watched, a small, knowing smile on her lips. Her brother, Pietro, a blur of motion, was suddenly beside her. "Time to go," he said, his voice quick and urgent. In a flash, he had scooped her up, and they were gone, vanishing from the lab as silently as they had appeared. Tony, still shaken, focused on the task. "Armor up hand," he commanded, and a section of his gauntlet reinforced. He carefully took the scepter. The blue gem pulsed faintly in his grip. He was about to head back upwards, scepter secure, when something caught his eye. Tucked away in a corner of the lab, almost hidden by shadows, was something out of the ordinary. It was the ice-like capsule he had seen glimpses of on some of the data Jarvis was now decrypting. Curious, he approached it. As he drew nearer, the internal glow illuminated what was inside. His breath hitched. It was a young man, suspended in the crystalline ice, eyes closed, looking deceptively peaceful. His hair was a shocking, brilliant white. Tony stared for a long moment. Then, he activated his comms again. Cap, you there? Loud and clear, Tony. What's your status? Do you have the scepter? Steve Rogers' voice replied. Yeah, got the pointy stick. But, you're not gonna believe this. I think I found your long-lost brother. The one you kept frozen, Tony said, his usual humor laced with genuine surprise. Though, I think one of you must be adopted or something, 'cause this kid's got white hair. Like, really white, and, not gonna lie, he's handsome, and that's coming from someone who has seen a lot of pretty women and me myself being a handsome. One more left boys. You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Like it, add to library. Kazuma_trash creators thoughts. 1 comments 0 vote. Chapter 3. A surprise. The Quinjet hummed steadily on autopilot, cutting through the Sokovian sky, leaving the smoking ruins of the Hydra base behind. Inside, the atmosphere was a mix of relief and tension. Hawkeye, Clint Barton, grunted in pain, clutching his torso where a piece of shrapnel had caught him. Bruce Banner was checking the wound, his touch surprisingly gentle. Thor sat with Mjolnir resting by his feet, and Captain America looked out the window, his expression thoughtful. Tony, having shed most of his armor, plopped down into a seat, the recovered scepter secured nearby. He surveyed the ice capsule now strapped down in the cargo bay. The white-haired young man inside was still, perfectly preserved. All right team, pop quiz, Tony began, breaking the silence. Any theories on why Hydra decided to put Jack Frost here on timeout? More importantly, what's our plan? Do we get him a stick and a cloak, or? Thor looked over, his brow furrowed as if the answer was incredibly simple. What is the confusion, Stark? It is quite clear. We simply awaken the young man and ask him. Tony raised a skeptical eyebrow. You serious, point break? Just, hey, kid, rise and shine, mind telling us why evil science Nazis flash froze you? Oh, you are serious. Natasha Romanoff, ever practical, spoke up. He's likely an experiment. Hydra could have kidnapped him, held him in stasis for future use, or perhaps he was part of whatever they were doing with the scepter. Thor's right, though, waking him is the most direct way to get answers. Though it's too risky, they could have modified his mind or something else, so I think for now him being in there is best. Captain America nodded in agreement. We can't just leave him like this. He deserves a chance, and we need to understand what Hydra was doing. Clint, wincing as Banner applied a fresh bandage, chimed in, his voice strained. So, am I the only one thinking maybe they froze him because something's wrong with the kid? Like, Super powered, not playing nice with others wrong. Remember those two we just tangled with? The fast one and the witchy one? He could be another one of their enhanced projects. What none of them realized was that their debate was rapidly becoming irrelevant. The intricate machinery that had kept the ice capsule stable in the Hydra lab had been disconnected during the transfer. The short time it took to move the capsule from the fortress to the Quinjet, unplugged from its power source, was all that was needed. Deep within the icy prison, a consciousness was stirring. The first sign was subtle. A tiny, almost invisible crack appeared on the surface of the ice-like capsule. Then another. Guys, Bruce said, his voice suddenly tight as he noticed. It was already too late. With a sound like a gunshot mixed with shattering crystal, the ice capsule exploded outwards. Shards of frozen material flew across the Quinjet. In the same instant, a section of the Quinjet's ceiling burst open with a deafening roar as the figure inside launched himself upwards and out. 1 second, the white-haired young man was encased in ice. The next, he was gone, a blur against the sky, leaving a gaping hole in the aircraft. It happened so incredibly fast that even the Avengers, with their heightened reflexes, were caught completely off guard. The Quinjet lurched violently, alarms blaring. "Nat, take the stick," Tony yelled, already slapping his hands together as his Iron Man armor began to form around him. "I'm going after our popsicle." With a final clang, the helmet snapped into place. Iron Man blasted out of the hole in the ceiling, chasing after the mysterious figure who had just made a very dramatic exit. The white-haired young man hung suspended in the cold, rushing air, high above the clouds. He wasn't falling, nor was he being propelled by any visible means like the armored figure now rocketing towards him. He was simply there, levitating with an unnatural stillness. His eyes, the color of a summer sky bleeding into a deep ocean, held a faint, ethereal glow. He blinked, looking down at his own hands, then around at the vast expanse of blue. He couldn't quite process what was happening or where he was. The last thing he remembered. It was fuzzy. Flashes of opening his eyes, soldiers in dark uniforms with a red, snake-like symbol on their shoulders. Then a surge of power, a brilliant blue light wrapping around them, and them, ceasing to exist, their forms twisted and crushed. After that, nothing but the cold. First-person POV, Gojo. Where exactly am I? To be honest, I don't really like surprises that much. That's why I don't mind spoilers for books or movies. And now, here I am, flying in the sky. Well, not exactly flying. Levitating, I guess. This is a pretty big surprise. I tried to move, to get a better sense of things. Just as I did, I heard a sound, like a miniature jet engine mixed with that distinct whoosh of repulsors, you know, the SFX from movies. Turning, I saw him. A flying metal man, red and gold, closing in fast. He was shouting something, but the wind snatched his words away. I didn't even have to look properly to know there was a jet, the one this metal man had come from, still flying below, and now it was angling towards my general direction. Okay, new person, maybe they can explain what's going on. I was about to raise a hand, maybe give a little wave, a friendly, hello, when it hit me. My brain exploded, not literally, thank goodness, but it felt like 1,000 needles were drilling into my skull, shoving memories in where there was only confusion before. So fast, all at once. The memories weren't mine, or, well, they were now, I guess. They belonged to this body. Gojo Satoru, 6 eyes, limitless, the strongest. And the metal man rapidly approaching. Iron Man, Tony Stark. Which meant, I wasn't in the JJK anime. I was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A wave of other, fainter memories tried to surface my own past life. I think it's called reincarnation. Or transmigration, something like that. I couldn't recall my old name, or how I ended up here. I remembered watching movies, these very movies, but the plots were hazy in my memories. My previous life, well, it wasn't exactly as exciting or important as Tony Stark's, or even Gojo Satoru's, to be honest. Or to be exact, I can't even remember anything about my past life. Third-person POV. The sudden, overwhelming influx of a lifetime's worth of memories, abilities, and the dawning realization of his bizarre predicament was too much. The inherent control Gojo Satoru possessed over his cursed energy flickered. The effortless levitation wavered, and he began to plummet, a streak of white against the blue. Whoa there, Sky Kid. Iron Man shouted, accelerating. He reached out, his armored arms catching the falling young man just before he became a very messy impact on the clouds below. Tony adjusted his hold, steadying them both in midair. "You okay, kid?" he asked, his voice filtered through the suit's speakers. "And what was that? Suddenly breaking the top of our jet and then floating there like you own the sky. And last question, you aren't a threat right now, are you?" The young man in his arms looked dazed, those unnervingly bright blue eyes still processing. He took a breath, then said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the circumstances, "Don't know the answer to the first two. I just woke up, and then the next second I was flying. And the answer to the last one is, well, I'm not sure." Tony Stark was silent for a beat. "Well," he finally said, his tone dry, "that wasn't too reassuring. Well, I'm finished here. Do tell me how was it, and if you are kind enough leave a review. Next chapter will be tomorrow or by Saturday. To be honest, it all depends on the comments and the support I will get from this. Any suggestion, thoughts, and questions are all welcomed in the comments in my Discord server. You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short, just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Creation is hard, cheer me up. Vote for me, Kazuma_Trash Creators Thoughts. 10 comments 0 vote. Download the app for greater interaction. You can chat with me about my writing experience apart from the comments section. Kazuma_Trash. Download app now. Chapter 4. Gojo Satoru. The rush of alien memories of Gojo Satoru, of cursed energy, of a world utterly different from this one began to coalesce in the young man's mind. The overwhelming chaos settled into a strange, new understanding. It was still disorienting, like trying to see through two different pairs of eyes at once, but the initial shock was fading. After about 5 seconds, which felt like an eternity suspended between worlds, a lopsided, almost understandable smirk spread across his face. "Hey, armor man," Gojo Satoru said, his voice startlingly clear and steady despite everything. He looked down at himself, then back at Iron Man. "I think I can fly now. Properly, I mean." Before Tony could even process the statement, let alone quip back, the young man in his grasp simply wasn't there. He vanished from Iron Man's hold without a whisper of movement. In the next instant, Gojo reappeared a few feet in front of him, levitating straight casually, effortlessly as if he'd been doing it his entire life. His white hair ruffled slightly in the wind, but he seemed perfectly at ease. Iron Man's thrusters flared slightly as he adjusted his own position. "Jarvis, you getting this?" he muttered under his breath, then spoke into the comms, his voice tight. "Okay, team, update. Kid is definitely levitating, no visible means of propulsion. He seems confused, maybe a little too calm, which is concerning. And he can teleport, just saw it, looks like a short-range blink." Gojo tilted his head, his bright blue eyes, now unnervingly sharp and focused, fixed on Iron Man. He'd clearly heard the comms transmission. "Don't worry so much, Armor Man," he said, his grin widening a fraction. "I'm not here to fight. To be honest, it just feels so refreshed. And surprisingly nice too." He gestured vaguely at the vast expanse of sky around them. "Didn't think I'd ever really appreciate the beauty of the sky this much." Iron Man hovered, maintaining a cautious distance. "Really, I do that all the time," Tony replied, a touch of his usual bravado returning. "Admire the beauty, I mean. Comes with the whole flying superhero gig. Great views." Gojo's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Well," he said, his voice a little softer, more thoughtful, "people often begin to appreciate their surroundings more when they've seen things they probably shouldn't have." Before Tony could parse that, Gojo blinked out of existence again and reappeared directly in front of Iron Man, close enough that Tony could see the almost unnatural perfection of his features. He extended a hand, palm open, in a clear gesture for a handshake. "Look, I don't really know what I'm doing here, or how I got here, to be honest," Gojo said, his tone surprisingly direct. "My own memories, the ones that feel like mine, are a bit of a mess. It's hard to deduce anything concrete. But I do know my name." He paused, his blue eyes meeting the glowing optics of Iron Man's helmet. "It's Gojo Satoru." Tony Stark was momentarily taken aback. The kid's demeanor was a strange mix of childlike wonder, unnerving confidence, and a hint of something ancient. "Well," Tony said, not taking the offered hand just yet, "everyone knows me, so I don't think I need an introduction." "Just kidding, Iron Man." He subtly shifted his weight. "Jarvis," he sub-vocalized, "run that name. Gojo Satoru. See if anything pops up. Anything at all." Meanwhile, back on the Quinjet, the remaining Avengers had recovered from the shock of their unexpected passenger's explosive departure and the subsequent hole in their ceiling. "Report, Tony." Captain America's voice came over the comms, steady and authoritative. "He's chatty," Tony replied. "And powerful. Says his name is Gojo Satoru. Claims memory loss but seems pretty composed for someone who just woke up from a popsicle nap and blew a hole in my jet." "Is he hostile?" Steve pressed. "Doesn't seem to be, not actively. More like a curious, super-powered cat who just found a new playground. But he's definitely an unknown." Captain America considered this. "All right team," he announced to the others in the Quinjet. "Hold your fire if he comes back with Tony. We don't engage unless he makes a direct threat. The kid isn't a confirmed enemy, at least, not yet. Tony is coming back with him, one way or another." The Quinjet touched down smoothly on the landing pad high atop Avengers Tower, the New York City skyline sprawling out beneath them. The rear ramp hissed open, and the team began to disembark, the tension from the mid-air encounter still lingering. Hawkeye was carefully helped onto a waiting gurney by a medical team. "A woman drive," Cho giving orders to the personnels. As they stepped onto the solid platform, Tony turned to Gojo, who was looking around with an almost detached curiosity, taking in the towering skyscrapers and the bustle of the landing pad. "So, kid," Tony said, his voice a little more subdued now, "you really don't remember anything? Like, anything other than your name? No favorite breakfast cereal? No awkward teenage memories you'd rather forget?" Before Gojo could answer, Captain America stepped forward, his expression serious but not unkind. "Tony, we shouldn't rush things. He just got out of that ice capsule, and who knows how long he was in it. Memories, if they're there, will come back when they're ready. Don't pressure him." Gojo, who had been observing the exchange, straightened up. A faint smile touched his lips. "I don't really have much now," he admitted, his gaze sweeping over them. "But I'll definitely let you know if anything clicks." He paused, his blue eyes landing on Steve. "Thanks for looking out for me, whatever your name is." He then added, with a touch of that earlier, unnerving confidence, "But you don't have to. Though, what I can say from the fragments I do have, is that I can be a little bit unbearable. That much, I'm pretty sure of." Tony snorted a laugh and said, "Well, that makes two of us now," and then he pushed himself up from where he'd briefly leaned against the Quinjet's frame. He began to walk towards the exit ramp with Gojo. Just then, Maria Hill, looking sharp in her shield attire, strode up, a datapad in her hand. "Boss," she said, nodding at Tony first, her eyes flicking curiously towards Gojo. "Who's the new kid?" Tony clapped a hand on Gojo's shoulder, a gesture that seemed more for show than actual guidance. "A guest, Hill, for now. He'll be staying with us. Prepare a room for him, will you? The good kind, not the one next to Hulk's quiet reflection chamber." He then jerked a thumb towards Steve, who was now talking with Natasha. "And he's the boss," Tony declared, pointing at Captain America. "I'm just the guy who pays for everything, designs everything, and makes him and everyone else look cooler." With that, Tony gestured for Gojo to follow, and they descended from the Quinjet into the tower proper. Maria Hill turned her attention to Steve as he finished his brief conversation with Natasha. "The two enhanced individuals you asked me to look into, from Strucker's facility," she began, her voice professional. "Their names are Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. Twins. Orphaned at 10 when a shell collapsed their apartment building. Sokovia's had a rough history, it's no secret. They've been involved in protests against Stark Industries and foreign intervention. It seems Strucker harnessed their latent abilities, augmented them. He's got a long history of human experimentation." Steve nodded, his expression somber. "And what about this new arrival?" he asked, glancing in the direction Tony and Gojo had disappeared. "Gojo Satoru." Hill's expression became puzzled. She tapped her datapad. "That's the strange part, Captain. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. No birth records, no school files, no government IDs, no social media, not even a whisper in any known database, ours or otherwise. We ran facial recognition against every global system. Nothing. Technically, she concluded, looking directly at Steve, he doesn't exist. Even though he's right here, walking around. Steve let out a slow breath. Good work, Hill. Keep digging, just in case. He looked towards the interior of the tower. Though I have a feeling we'll get most of our answers from the kid himself, sooner or later. He just hoped those answers wouldn't bring more trouble than they were already dealing with. Well, that is that for now. So, how was it? You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short, just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Creation is hard, cheer me up. Vote for me. Kazuma_Trash Creators Thoughts. 14 comments 0 vote. Chapter 5. Infinity. Few hours later. Later that day, Gojo found himself perched on a stool at the sleek, modern bar in one of the tower's common areas. He was sipping a glass of orange juice, which Black Widow Natasha had offered him. Given his apparent age, alcohol was out of the question, and frankly, Gojo, or at least, the fragments of personality and preference that were surfacing, wasn't a big fan anyway. He definitely recalled not being able to handle it well. Natasha poured herself a small glass of something amber and leaned against the counter, her expression carefully neutral, though a hint of curiosity played around her eyes. So, she began, her voice smooth and casual, any idea how long you were in that ice capsule, Gojo? Gojo took another sip of his juice, then looked at her, a playful, almost challenging glint in his bright blue eyes. Why are you asking me that in such a flirty way? He asked, a smirk tugging at his lips. And with that flirty little smile. I'm sorry, but I'm not really interested in you. He then added, almost as an afterthought, and no, I don't know how long I was in there. Natasha blinked, momentarily taken aback. She hadn't intended to sound flirty, it was more of an unconscious habit, a way of disarming people, of gauging reactions. It was a subtle form of teasing, a way to see how he'd respond. But Gojo's blunt, preemptive rejection, even if delivered playfully, stung a little, more than she would have liked to admit. Just then, Steve Rogers, Captain America, walked over and took the stool next to Gojo. He'd overheard the exchange and offered a small, understanding smile towards Natasha before turning to the white-haired young man. Well, Steve said, his tone light, she does that a lot. Don't take it the wrong way. It's just, her way. Gojo shifted his gaze from Natasha to Steve, his head tilting slightly as he studied the captain. Can I ask you something? He began, then seemed to reconsider. No, actually, I'll just say this, what's with your costume? He gestured vaguely up and down Steve's off-duty but still recognizable attire. Like, you didn't have a better option. Or did you run out of money to get another design? Seriously, what's the story there? Because your costume pick feels like some kind of 8th grade syndrome mixed with a righteous fever of justice. I mean, literally, who chooses their costume to be a country's flag? Steve's eyes widened slightly, a surprised laugh escaping him. Wow, he said, shaking his head. You've got quite a mouth on you, kid. You're like a mini Tony. As if summoned by the mere mention of his name, Tony Stark strolled into the common area, a glass of what looked like expensive scotch in his hand. Hey, Cap, can you please not make every new kid a mini-me? He said, overhearing the last comment. He sauntered over to the bar. And for the record, Tony added, turning to Gojo with a grin, on the costume part, I totally agree with the kid. Seriously, Steve, if you like, I could give you some suggestions. Something a little less, stars and stripes forever, maybe a bit more, sleek and intimidating. Gojo turned his attention to Tony, a genuine smile spreading across his face this time. Though, I have to say, he said, nodding towards where Tony's armor was likely stored, I really like your armor. That's cool. Tony beamed, puffing his chest out slightly. See, everyone loves my armor, he declared triumphantly. Even the government wants a piece of it. Good taste, kid. You've got good taste. He took a sip of his drink, looking pleased. The atmosphere, for a moment, felt surprisingly light, despite the undercurrent of unanswered questions and potential dangers. Tony, buoyed by Gojo's compliment, strolled closer, intending to give the kid a friendly, appreciative tap on the shoulder. See, told ya. His hand stopped dead in midair, inches from Gojo's shoulder, as if it had hit an invisible wall. Tony's jovial expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise. Unconsciously, he muttered, "What?" trying to push forward, but his hand met unyielding resistance. Steve and Natasha, observing from their spots, exchanged surprised glances. This was new. It wasn't aggressive, but it was definitely a power, perhaps akin to the energy manipulation they'd seen from Wanda Maximoff back in Sokovia, but different, more subtle. Tony, his mind instantly kicking into analytical mode, pulled his hand back. "Okay, hold up," he said, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Gojo, then at the empty space around him. "Is this another one of your powers like super strength, super speed and teleportation? Some kind of personal force field? A localized distortion?" Because that felt like hitting a very polite, very firm, no touchy, zone. "Jarvis, are you picking up any energy signatures around him?" Gojo just took another unconcerned sip of his orange juice. "Well," he said, setting the glass down with a soft clink. "You can say that. It's part of what I do. It doesn't let anything actually reach my body. It just slows it down infinitely as it gets closer." Steve, ever the tactician, leaned forward, confused. "So, how does that work? You didn't even move. You weren't concentrating." "It's semi-automatic," Gojo replied simply, tapping a finger against his temple. "My brain handles it." Tony's eyes lit up with understanding. "So, it's like you have your own armor, similar to mine, but completely invisible. A constant defensive perimeter, active in an instant whenever you want it." Gojo shook his head slightly. "Not exactly like yours," he clarified, a hint of amusement in his voice. "This can't be bypassed by conventional means. Unless you have something that can literally negate or warp space itself, you're not getting through. And it can't be destroyed from the outside by force." He paused, then added, with a casualness that belied the incredible statement, "In short, I can more or less control the infinity that exists around me." Tony's mind raced, connecting dots. The teleportation he'd witnessed earlier, the sudden appearance and disappearance. "Wait a minute," he said, snapping his fingers as a theory formed. "So, when you teleported, earlier when you appeared in front of me in the sky, and when you blasted out of that capsule in my Quinjet, you weren't actually teleporting in the traditional sense, were you? You were manipulating space. You compressed the distance between your starting point and your destination, effectively warping space so that you just appeared there. Like folding a piece of paper so two distant points touch." For the capsule and Quinjet thing, Tony deduces that he just destroyed it superfast and moved superfast, and after he saw how it appeared in front of him in an instant, he deduced it as a teleportation. But for the kid to be warping space so casually, that was surprising. Gojo's bright blue eyes widened slightly, a genuine look of surprise crossing his features. He seemed genuinely impressed. "Wow," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You understood that fast. You are smart." He chuckled. "Usually, I have to explain it in a way simpler way for people to get even the basic concept. You know, like, I make the distance really, really small, really, really fast." Tony puffed out his chest, a self-satisfied grin on his face. "Kid, you're talking to Tony Stark. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist," he recited, ticking them off on his fingers. "I have several PhDs in physics, electrical engineering, and a few others I picked up for fun on a Tuesday. So yeah, I get the idea." He winked. "An ability or power like your we should compare notes sometime and see what else you can do." Well, how was it? They aren't pressing him in to tell his abilities instantly, as they don't know what Hydra had done to a kid, and they also think that kid is a little unstable in the mind. So they are taking a simple level approach by making him trust them. "You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short, just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ 2 kilonewtons 2Y. 10 comments 0 vote." Chapter 6. 6 Eyes. The four of them, Gojo, Tony, Steve, and Natasha, continued their surprisingly amiable chat, the initial tension having eased into a cautious curiosity. Gojo, despite him being a guest, he was acting like he owns this place and it was his home. Well, it was good, even though they think that maybe in head he is a little unstable or whatever. He seemed quite normal if you take away his little arrogance like Tony and his personality of praising himself every time. Like Tony just asked him a few questions about his abilities like how they work or like, and Gojo just answered with, "Ah, it's nothing, I'm just that awesome." Suddenly, Gojo paused mid-sentence, his head turning slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. He looked towards the main entrance of the common area, then back at Tony. "Hey, Armor Man," he said, his brow furrowed slightly. "Is someone supposed to be coming in here? Like, a lot of people. They're heading this way." Tony frowned, glancing at his watch. "Oh, right, it seems no one filled you in, kid. Tonight's the We Didn't All Die on the Latest Hydra Takedown party. A little celebration for a successful, albeit hole in my jet, mission." He then tilted his head, a curious glint in his eyes. "But really, how did you know that?" Gojo looked genuinely confused. "How what? Like," Tony elaborated, gesturing vaguely towards the elevators, "how do you know there are people coming? They aren't even on this floor yet. Jarvis hasn't announced anyone." Instead of answering directly, Gojo finished the last of his orange juice. Then, in a blink, he was gone from the barstool and reappeared instantly by the large panoramic window, which offered a breathtaking view of the glittering New York City skyline. He stood there for a moment, looking out, though his gaze seemed unfocused. "Yeah, about that," he said, turning back to them, his expression a little strained. "Can I get a pair of black glasses to wear? It's overwhelming, literally." Tony raised an eyebrow. "Hey, kid, it's Tony, not Armor Man, all the time. And what's with wanting to cover up those baby blues? Girls will probably throw themselves at you just by looking at your eyes. What's so overwhelming? If it's the city lights, I can just tell Jarvis to dim the smart glass." Gojo squinted slightly, as if even the ambient light in the room was too much. "Not the lights exactly," he explained, his voice a little softer. "It's the information through these eyes." He gestured to his own eyes. "They're a little special, and it's very overwhelming, all the input. So, if you could get me some full black glasses, something I ideally can't see through at all, that would be good." Tony considered this for a moment, then reached into the pocket of his designer jacket. "Well, you can try mine," he said, pulling out a sleek, high-tech pair of sunglasses. "These aren't your average drugstore shades. You can adjust the view, tint, magnification, even link them to Jarvis for data overlays. Give them a whirl." He tossed the glasses casually towards Gojo. Gojo caught them effortlessly. He examined them for a second, then put them on. He fiddled with a nearly invisible control on the side. To anyone else looking through them, if he'd set the visibility to 0, the world would have gone completely black. But for Gojo, even with the lenses effectively opaque, he could still see everything, perhaps even too clearly, the immense flood of information his 6 eyes perceived now just slightly, blessedly muted. A genuine, appreciative smile spread across his face. "Have to say," he commented, looking at Tony, "as far as I can remember, I haven't seen any glasses quite like this. Are they new on the market or something?" Tony took a satisfied sip of his scotch. "Nah," he said with a nonchalant wave of his hand. "I made them. Custom job." Just then, Jarvis's calm, synthesized voice filled the room. "Sir, your guests for the party have begun to arrive." As if on cue, the main doors to the common area slid open, and a wave of people began to enter. The atmosphere instantly shifted from quiet conversation to a low, buzzing murmur of voices and clinking glasses. Men in expensive suits and women in elegant dresses filled the space, some older, distinguished figures, some younger, vibrant socialites, and many undeniably beautiful women, all here to celebrate with the Avengers. The party was in full swing. Music pulsed gently, laughter echoed, and the clinking of glasses provided a constant soundtrack. Gojo, still wearing Tony's high-tech sunglasses, navigated the crowd with an odd mixture of detached observation and surprising ease. He'd snagged another juice and was mostly people watching, occasionally engaging in brief, polite, and slightly bewildering conversations with guests who were intrigued by the striking, white-haired young man no one seemed to know. Finding a quieter corner, Tony, Steve, and Natasha gathered, their gazes occasionally drifting towards Gojo. "So," Tony began, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, "what's the consensus on our resident space bender?" He hasn't shown any overt psychopathic tendencies, no homicidal glares, no muttering about world domination. All I can gather from our little chat is that he has literal space warping powers, which is, you know, minorly concerning. He took a sip. He's surprisingly open, didn't show a lick of fear when he woke up in a jet full of strangers, and just casually told us about his god-tier abilities like he was discussing the weather. It's like he knows he could just waltz out of here anytime he wants. And that line about having to explain his powers in a simpler way to people makes me think he remembers more than he's letting on and just doesn't want to talk about it. Natasha nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Well, I have past memories I'm not exactly comfortable sharing with anyone, not even with you guys, she admitted quietly. Maybe Hydra did a number on him. We don't know how long he was their prisoner, or what they put him through. He might just not want to talk about it, or even want to remember it. Steve agreed, his gaze softening as he watched Gojo expertly sidestep a particularly enthusiastic partygoer. Romanoff's right, he said. We don't know what kind of things he went through, especially as a child if he was taken then. We can't force him. If he doesn't want to talk about his past right now, our best bet is to observe him, make sure he feels safe, and ensure he doesn't inadvertently harm himself or anyone else with those abilities. Tony scoffed lightly. Really, Cap, observe him, keep him secure. For all we know, we're housing a kid with powers that could level this city before breakfast, and you're talking about making him feel safe. Steve turned to him, an eyebrow raised. Really, Stark, you're the one who offered him a room the moment he set foot in the tower, and now you're questioning the keeping him safe part. Tony took another drink, shrugging. So, what did you want me to say? Hey, kid, here's a temporary cot in the broom closet, you'll probably be gone before we know it, try not to break anything on your way out. And let's be honest, he can warp literal space. You really think we can observe, or secure him if he doesn't want to be? He can leave this place, this country probably, anytime he wants, and we don't have a single thing in our arsenal that could reliably stop it. Natasha conceded with a nod. Tony has a point there. Containing him if he decides to be uncooperative isn't exactly a viable option. Steve sighed, running a hand through his hair. He straightened up, his shoulders squaring. Well, let's just hope we don't reach a point where we have to fight him, or worse. For now, let's focus on making him comfortable. Maybe he even knows something about those other two enhanced individuals from Sokovia, Wanda and Pietro. If he was in the same facility, he might have seen something. He could potentially help us understand them, maybe even help us stop them if they become a bigger threat. Natasha let out a small, wry laugh. Well, I wouldn't worry too much just yet. Tony and Gojo seem to be getting along surprisingly well. She gave Tony a pointed look. And it's not like their personalities are worlds apart, either. Arrogant, brilliant, a flair for the dramatic, sound familiar. Tony just grinned, raising his glass in a mock toast. Hey, greatness recognizes greatness. A.N. Well, how was it? Do send power stones if you like it. You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Chapter 7. Banner. Gojo, true to himself, unbearable, nature, was holding court with a small, captivated audience of beautifully dressed women. He was charming them with witty remarks and, much to their delight, performing magic tricks. Empty glasses floated lazily in the air, bottles tipped themselves to pour drinks non-alcoholic for him, of course all achieved with an effortless flick of his wrist or a subtle application of his infinity. He called it, a little something I picked up, much to their amusement. However, even Gojo's capacity for entertaining and being entertained by admiring onlookers had its limits. After a while, the persistent suggestions for him to try a real drink, or to stay and share just one more story, began to wear thin. With a disarming smile and a promise to be right back, he subtly warped space just enough to slip away from the eager group without causing a commotion. He spotted Steve Rogers across the room, deep in conversation with Sam Wilson, also known as the Falcon. Deciding that looked more interesting, Gojo, with a near imperceptible shimmer, warped himself directly behind them, appearing silently between their shoulders. Sam, understandably, jumped a little, startled by the sudden appearance of the white-haired young man. Steve, though less overtly surprised, still tensed for a moment. Sam looked Gojo up and down. "So, you're the kid they found in that Hydra base," he said, his tone a mix of curiosity and caution. Gojo, still wearing Tony's sleek sunglasses, met Sam's gaze. "Are you one of this group?" he asked, his head tilting slightly. "Because, no offense, but you look kinda weak, man. Compared to the others, anyway." Sam's eyebrows shot up. He glanced at Steve, a disbelieving look on his face. "Well, this kid is hella rude, Steve." Gojo shook his head, a small, almost pitying smile on his lips. "There's nothing rude about telling the truth," he stated matter-of-factly. "If you went into a serious fight, against someone big, you'd probably get killed in a minute or so. Though," he added, as if an afterthought, "I suppose you could handle the weaker ones. So, you're not really core team, more like a background character, huh? Support staff." Steve quickly stepped in before Sam could retort, placing a calming hand on Sam's arm. "Gojo, that's not really." Gojo raised both his hands in a placating gesture, though his smirk remained. Understood. I'm going," he said, already starting to back away. "It seems some people can't handle the truth." Sensitive. With another almost invisible warp, he vanished from between them. He reappeared a moment later near a quieter section of the party, where a few isolated seating areas offered a reprieve from the main throng. He spotted Bruce Banner sitting alone at a small table, nursing a drink and looking somewhat lost in thought. Gojo strolled over and, without invitation, pulled up a chair, sitting directly in front of him. "Why are you sitting all alone, Dr. Banner?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle compared to his earlier interaction. Banner looked up, a little startled, but his expression softened when he saw Gojo. "Oh, Gojo," he said, offering a small, tired smile. "Hello. Well, I just like to be alone sometimes. I don't really fit in with big groups at parties. Not my scene." He took a sip of his drink, his gaze distant. Dr. Banner, intrigued by the bits and pieces Tony had no doubt excitedly relayed about Gojo's abilities, looked at the young man with a scientist's curiosity. "So," Bruce began, his voice soft, "Tony mentioned your powers are space-related. That's one hell of a superpower, I have to say." Gojo nodded, a casual air about him. "Well, yes, it seems Armor Man did tell you. It's not just space-related, though. It's more like space and time. And I can even, you know," he trailed off, then gestured subtly towards an empty glass on a nearby table. A faint, azure glow enveloped the glass. With a sharp crack, it shattered, but instead of falling, the shards reversed their trajectory, pulling inwards, attracting towards a central point until they coalesced into a small, dense ball of glass resting on Gojo's extended fingertip. He then calmly walked over to a nearby trash can, dropped the glass ball in with a soft thud, and returned to his seat. "Do that too," he finished, as if he'd merely performed a simple card trick. Dr. Banner's eyes widened, a look of genuine scientific fascination on his face. "Amazing," he breathed. What was that?" "Reversal. Attraction. And you seem remarkably open about your abilities, Gojo. Most people with powers, they don't tend to casually reveal them like this." Gojo just shrugged, leaning back in his chair, the epitome of unconcern. "Well, I'm not really like most people, am I? I mean, what could you guys even do to me, even if you know everything I can do? A bomb couldn't touch me. I can stop anything, literally anything, and my brain automatically filters out what's harmful, keeping it outside my infinity. Even your, big green guy," he said, glancing meaningfully at Banner, "wouldn't be able to lay a finger on me." He paused, then added with a confident smirk, "If anything, by all measurable factors, I'm pretty strong. Maybe the strongest." Gojo and Banner continued their conversation, with Bruce asking more detailed, albeit still cautious, questions about the nature of Gojo's powers. Banner, unlike Tony's more bombastic assessment or Steve's concerned caution, found Gojo to be, well, a kid. A kid with an ego and an almost unbearable level of arrogance, certainly. But underneath that, he seemed surprisingly normal, almost endearingly so. Tony and Steve might have theorized about brain damage or deep-seated trauma, but Banner saw a young man, perhaps a little lost and certainly overconfident but not inherently malicious. And don't most teenagers have a degree of ego and arrogance? In that sense, Gojo seemed almost typical. So, how was it? 2 more chapters after this. Send power stones. You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short, just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Creation is hard, cheer me up. Vote for me, Kazuma_Trash Creators Thoughts. 6 comments 0 vote. Chapter 8. Suggestion. Meanwhile, at another table, the core Avengers members Tony, Steve, Natasha, and now Clint, who was looking much better after Dr. Cho's ministrations had gathered. Okay, team huddle, Tony said, lowering his voice. Gojo. He's powerful, a bit of a wild card, but so far, not actively trying to vaporize us. So, I've got an idea. How about letting the kid join us? Part-time, of course. Intern, Junior Avenger. We can come up with a cool title. Steve immediately frowned. Tony, he's a kid. He just got out of a Hydra icebox. He should be protected here, maybe get some counseling, not be thrown into fights where he could get seriously harmed, or worse. Tony leaned forward, a glint in his eye. But Captain, didn't you say earlier that we need to observe him, make sure he doesn't harm himself or others? What better way to observe him, to understand his capabilities and his temperament, than by having him around us, seeing how he reacts under pressure, even in controlled training scenarios? Keeping him cooped up in the tower might just make him more antsy. This way, he's with us, where we can keep an eye on him and maybe even channel those powers constructively. Natasha, ever the pragmatist, sided with Tony's logic. He's right, Steve, she said, her gaze steady. Better to have Gojo where we can see him and potentially guide him, than out there doing God knows what unsupervised. If he is a threat, or becomes one, we need to understand the full extent of it. And that's harder to do if he's not around. Clint, however, remained wary, his arms crossed. Another super-powered individual with unknown loyalties. We just dealt with Loki, and then Hydra using enhanced individuals. I'm not exactly eager for a repeat performance. He gestured vaguely. Look at those twins in Sokovia powers running rogue, causing chaos. We don't know where this kid's head is at. Steve listened, his expression thoughtful. He looked over at Gojo, who was now animatedly explaining something to a fascinated Bruce Banner, using his hands to emphasize his points. Finally, he let out a slow breath. All right, he conceded, his voice firm. We observe, but there are strict conditions. No frontline combat until we are absolutely certain of his stability, his control, and frankly, his intentions. Training exercises, supervised low-risk scenarios only. And he is still a kid, Tony, Steve added, giving Tony a pointed look. We treat him as such, with appropriate oversight and support, not just as another weapon. Tony, never one to let an opportunity pass, grinned. Deal. He then, in his typical fashion, pushed himself up and sauntered over to where Gojo and Banner were conversing. So, kid, Tony announced, clapping his hands together lightly as he approached their table. Gojo and Banner both looked up. We had a little talk regarding you. The grown-ups decided you're too strong and potentially too much of a talking incident kid to just let you wander off and accidentally do something regrettable, like, say, destroy something important. He leaned down, resting his hands on the back of an empty chair. So, how'd you like to be an Avenger in training? An intern, we can even get you a little name tag. Gojo Satoru, half Avenger. Gojo looked up from his seat, Tony's sleek sunglasses still perched on his nose, rendering his expression initially unreadable. He seemed utterly unimpressed. Intern, he repeated, a slight drawl to his voice. Why would I need to be an intern for your little club? Seems a bit beneath me, don't you think? He then let a sly grin spread across his face. But, he conceded, tapping a finger against his chin, it might be less boring than just sitting around here. What's in it for me? Do I get better things to play with? And, more importantly, can I get a smartphone? One of those cool touchscreen ones. And can it have your AI, Jarvis, in it? I like him. He's efficient. Tony just shrugged, a smirk playing on his lips. A phone with Jarvis? Why not? Fine by me. He mentally high-fived himself. The kid had just willingly agreed to carry around a device that would essentially allow Jarvis to monitor him. Win-win. Just as Gojo seemed to be considering the offer, Steve walked over, his expression serious. If you're going to be around us, Gojo, Steve interjected, his tone that of a leader laying down the law. There are protocols. Rules. Teamwork, communication, following orders in critical situations. Gojo waved a dismissive hand, cutting Steve off mid-sentence, his previous playful demeanor shifting to one of casual arrogance. Yeah, protocols are for people who need them, he said, not even bothering to look directly at Steve. I generally just do what needs to be done, the most efficient way. Usually, that turns out to be my way. This clearly ruffled Steve's feathers. He opened his mouth to retort, his jaw tightening, but Tony quickly stepped in, placing a hand on Steve's arm. Easy, Cap, baby steps. We'll work on the team player aspect. He's a work in progress. A very, very powerful work in progress. The party continued, a vibrant hum of music, conversation, and clinking glasses filling the grand common room of Avengers Tower. Gojo, having agreed to his new internship, mostly, it seemed, for the promise of a Jarvis-equipped smartphone and less boredom, had surprisingly decided to mingle a bit more, albeit on his own terms. He found himself near a group discussing something about global economics, a topic that made his eyes glaze over even behind Tony's sunglasses. Excusing himself with a charmingly vague, important intern duties, he warped a few feet away to a less crowded spot by the dessert table. His eyes, or rather, the 6 eyes behind the dark lenses, scanned the array of pastries with an almost scientific intensity. Now this is a protocol I can get behind, he muttered to himself, levitating a miniature cheesecake onto a plate without touching it. Across the room, Natasha was observing him with a practiced eye. She nudged Clint, who was nursing a drink. He's surprisingly good at blending in when he wants to, she commented. For someone who is arrogant and expert at self-praising. Clint grunted. Or he's just good at finding the free food. Don't underestimate the allure of a well-stocked dessert table for a teenager, superpowered or not. Tony, meanwhile, was schmoozing with a senator, effortlessly charming and deflecting pointed questions about his latest tech. Steve was trying to engage Sam in a discussion about potential dangerous stuffs and some COMD cases, missing persons files, but Sam was mostly distracted by the sheer audacity of the kid, recruit. You really think that kid's going to listen to a word about protocols, Steve? He practically told you your rulebook was toilet paper. Nat, how the hell did you agree to let him join the Avenger, when even? To complete it, Sam wasn't part of the Avengers team but a supporting role. He was interested in joining the Avengers team, but to think a kid with an arrogant attitude got into a team before him. Power Stones. You can join my Discord server, URL. Or in short, just click in join via invite link in your Discord and enter this code 5Y7UZ2 kilonewtons 2Y. Creation is hard, cheer me up. Vote for me.